Williams, Rachel Williams.
Madam Speaker, I've risen momentarily to make a contribution to the debate and to give partial support on the particular resolution which states that all nations in the Caribbean, the Americas, and the Atlantic region of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association strengthen their union and take a united stance and fight against the negative aspects of the encroachment of globalization that runs counter to their national interests. But before I do that, Madam Speaker, I wish to pay tribute to 4 gentlemen who were instrumental in setting up this regional youth parliament 16 years ago in the Bahamas. Desmond Ward and Leon Ramig, who are now of blessed memory, and Times Morris and Mr. Farrell Smithen. Madam Speaker, Ralph Gonsalves quite eloquently contended and summed up my argument that our Caribbean civilization, like all civilizations, has been built on labor, the producers and the contours of the society fashioned by the social organization of labor. Our civilization, metaphorically, has emerged as containing the songs of the Kalinagos, Arawaks, and the Merindians, the rhythm of Africa, the chords of Asia, the melody of Europe, and the lyrics of the Caribbean itself. He further went on to say that our Caribbean, viewed as a whole, constitutes a civilization that can be gauged from the following characteristics: a shared history of European conquest, settlement, exploitation, colonialism, and empire, demographics, cultural matrices and milieux, political values, and evolved European languages. Therefore, Madam Speaker, it beckons us to consider, is globalization really an existential threat to the Caribbean's cultural identity, particularly given the fact that globalization is to CARICOM or any other union in this geopolitical space as your half-brother from that village realm of a father you have is to you. He's your brother, but he still isn't your brother. Likewise, globalization is ever present, but still isn't really present, as this union of islands forges its socio-economic standings on and by virtue of the hand of globalization. So is globalization really having a negative impact on our sovereignty and integrity when CARICOM is a lose-lose cause? When the whole concept and ideology of CARICOM is based on the precept that if you invest $1 million, you get back $20 at best and none at worst? When the very organ institutions that are supposed to characterize CARICOM are just resource mosquitoes to our socioeconomic development? But then what is troubling, Madam Speaker, is that the resolution is vague in its wording, as there is no specification as to what union we're referring to and what geopolitical yardstick we should use to measure the extent of globalization in this hemisphere. And I therefore pose 2 questions. Is it CARICOM and ACS? And is an amendment to the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas a prerequisite? The problem of globalization appears to be ever existential and external to this region because, as Errol Barrow contended, your ambition in life is to try and get away from this country. And you call yourselves an independent nation when all we want to do is go and scrub somebody's floor, or work in somebody's store, or run somebody's elevator, or drive somebody's taxi in a country where you're catching your royal when the winter sets in. Now tell me, Madam Speaker, isn't the problem internal to the Caribbean? I contend, therefore, that it is easy to look at the superficial hurrah of becoming more and more interdependent on the United States and the embattled European Union, and allow them to influence our economies, styles, flair, and nuances, and think that we are dipping in coppers of gold, when in reality, the average Guyanese or Jamaican is still looked at strangely at the immigration booth in Barbados or even Trinidad, although we have in place the Caribbean single market and economy. We must remember that without a glimmer of doubt, the power of the people is still greater than the people in power. And so our success should be measured at a commensurate extent to the graduation of globalization in our region and our region's economies. And so while we look at these phenomena as globalization, these industrialized and condescending monoliths view our adoption and adaptation of their influences as demonization. And in fact, we here in this geopolitical space have conjectured the absurd proposition that if European and American recovery to the global economic and financial crisis can be described as sluggish, the situation in the Caribbean could be worse than it already is. To this, Errol Barrow said, it is dehumanizing and false to view the Caribbean as potential American problems. We are peoples with an identity and a culture and a history.
Honorable member, you have 2 more minutes.
Thank you very much. And we don't need lessons in democracy from anyone. And Madam Speaker, let me add, we don't need lessons in economics from anyone either. Collectively, we have the resource potential necessary for our continued development. What kind of society are we striving for? There is no point striving for utopia, but you do not realize your potential. We have a tool that is oft forgotten. That is, we have a yoke of sovereignty long from Georgetown, Guyana to Timbuktu. Well, let us use it, particularly given the fact that the CARICOM Commission of 2010 stated and concluded that youth are the most underutilized resource for the development of Caribbean communities, countries, and the region. They comprise a sector of the population best positioned by the virtue of their creative potentials in responding to the challenges of globalization. In fact, Maurice Bishop posited in 1981 that we would sooner give up our lives before we compromise, sell out, or betray our sovereignty, independence, integrity, our manhood, and our people's right to national self-determination and social progress. Madam Speaker, I leave to let rest on our minds for the rest of the week that the perfect country with a checked and balanced system of allowing globalization to run its course has a mirror image of themselves. They have self-respect. They have a desire to move their country forward by their own devices. They are not waiting for anybody to come and give them handouts, and there is no unemployment. Madam Speaker, is that the mirror image that you have of yourselves? I am obliged to you, Madam Speaker, on the basis that we review this resolution, particularly given the fact that we are the only ones in this Caribbean region truly encroaching ourselves.